I was talking to Joe. I just said I get to see how he navigates here.
Oh.
I'm tired.
I'm sure you are.
Oh, are we live?
Weeks.
Okay.
That's strange. Here's an owner who asks, he wants to cancel.
We're
Oh, well, we live. Okay.
live. But yes, I picked out a bunch of those.
I'm surprised.
No, I think it's evident what's current. There are a couple comments to that
Question
effect.
11.
Yeah.
Nice. I didn't realize they made a decision on the sanctuary. That must have happened this afternoon. I had a meeting at 2.
All right. We all set? All right, I'm going to go ahead and call this Town Council Special Call Meeting to order. And the first order of business is going to be a executive session. Could I have a motion for us to move into executive session to get legal advice with respect to our emergency ordinance?
So moved.
Second.
All right, and I apologize to all of you who are watching that we do need to go into an executive session pretty quickly. I don't think it will last long. Joe, do you have a sense? 15 minutes? Okay, so it may last about 15 minutes. We will do our best to be quick about it, and when we come back, I'll wait a few minutes to start the meeting so that if anybody has headed off away from their laptops or whatever, they have a few minutes to know that we're back in the session. So this should take about 15 or 20 minutes. Thank you. we do under 15 minutes? We'll just wait for, who we missing, Chris?
Councilman Wyatt.
All right, we'll just wait a couple minutes, plus I said we'd wait a couple minutes, let everybody get back to their laptops or iPhones or whatever they're looking at. Probably if we went out to the beach right now, everybody's sitting there with their iPhone watching us on the.
I got this by email. Is there something similar in the questions already, or do we need to? I think I saw stuff in there that covers that.
I think these other issues will get resolved
Yeah.
soon.
Good.
Okay. All right, you all here? Do I have a motion to exit executive session and return to our regular session?
So moved.
Second? All right, we are back into regular session, and I need to indicate that in our executive session, no decisions were made and no votes were taken. With that, I would like to move to the new business, and new business is to consider approval of the amendment of ordinance 2020-1, which is the emergency ordinance of the Town Council of the Town of Kiawah Island, South Carolina, to declare a state of emergency, temporarily suspend the normal operating procedures of council meetings, and take additional measures to protect the public. Council members, all of you have a copy of the amendments that are being discussed for consideration. I just want to highlight, because there's in this a lot of whereases and a lot of information. So I want to highlight for all of you what I think are the major changes here. The first one is in item 3, pursuant to CDC guidelines, social gatherings of 10 or more people for any reason other than working at or receiving essential services is prohibited. What we're doing there is, I think, as you all know, the restriction or guideline on prohibiting groups in excess of 10 people is a number that has been used both at the federal level and also at the state level. We have been using and essentially using that 10-person guideline in the town as we address issues such as on the beach, our beach patrol at looking at groups there or elsewhere on the island. But at this point, we have always we never adopted that in an ordinance as an actual ordinance for the town. We've just used and referred to the state's guideline. So what this is doing is actually adopting that as part of our emergency ordinance. I think it in some ways is a little more than symbolism. I think it puts our any of our entities that are involved in enforcement, the beach patrol, code compliance, anyone else who might have occasion or need to deal with a group of 10 or more, puts them in a different position with respect to their ability to do it. But it doesn't change what essentially we've been trying to do. We have been using the 10-person rule. The other thing it does in that same group, in that same provision, is adopts as part of our ordinance the governor's earlier order, which gave law enforcement the capability to disperse a group of 3 or more people if in their judgment that group of 3 or more people had any sort of public safety risk associated with them. So I know there's been a lot of confusion on that. I know that in our town communications we have tried to clarify that the three rule does not mean that you cannot have groups of people larger than 3. It is purely a law enforcement mechanism that when they are in a situation that they see a problem, if the group is 3 or more, law enforcement has some additional some additional capabilities. So we're adding that into our order. The most pertinent element of this is item 4. Property managers, owners, and anyone else involved in the advertising of a short-term rental are prohibited from advertising the short-term rental's availability from March 25th, 2020 through April 15th, 2020. As part of this prohibition, any online booking calendars for units shall not indicate that the unit is available from March 25th, 2020 through April 15th, 2020. So mouthful, essentially what this means is that in our original action, what we said is that a short-term rental owner or a property management company representing that owner could not take a new booking for the time between a week ago when we approved this and April 15th. The problem we ran into is an enforcement issue. What we found, and what I believe, is that the overwhelming majority of our short-term rental owners and our short-term rental managers did in fact cooperate and have tried to help implement this ordinance. However, we do know that that's not the case in all situations, and we have a problem in being able to enforce this because we do have a number of short-term rentals that have not in any visible way blocked out those dates.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, it is difficult for us to know whether they are or are not renting or not renting during that period of time. I believe some of those, I certainly do believe that some of those that have not blocked it out are still properly complying, but I think we have a very good reason to think that some or many of them also are not. So what the intent of this is to say not only can you not book during that period of time, but in fact you cannot advertise that property is available for rental during the dates that we've blocked out. I think that will make it more clear. It'll make it easier for us to enforce. This is very much a matter of fairness because it is clearly not fair for the majority of rental owners who are complying with this to then be undercut by others who are at the same time continuing to rent their properties.
Mr. Mayor, I have a language question. Is that appropriate at this point or after we have a motion?
Why don't we do it after we get the motion?
Fair enough.
Okay. The next thing that we're doing is in number 5. We are asking that property managers inform all renters in writing, and by writing I would encompass that to include email, the restrictions contained in Section 3 of the emergency order, as well as the self-quarantine restrictions imposed by Governor McMaster's executive order. And this deals with the required self-quarantine for individuals entering South Carolina from high-risk areas. And essentially what we're doing is asking or expecting property managers to assist the town and the community in informing renters of the restrictions that have been placed, especially on people coming from those locations. And we provide them with the language. Those are the primary changes in provisions in the proposal you have in front of you. To open it up for discussion, I would first ask for a motion to approve. And Joe, I have to ask, are we still calling this simply an amendment to 2021, or is this 2020-02?
I intended to just call it a new ordinance. I would say that
So it's,
item 1 just says the 2020-01 remains in full force and effect.
so we'll call this 20-02?
Yes.
Okay, all right. So I would ask for a motion to approve.
So
I so
moved.
move.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, before we now open this for discussion, I would like to, in turn, recommend and ask for a motion to amend the ordinance that we've just discussed. And what I am proposing and would like consideration from the town council is to further amend the ordinance to make 2 changes. One would be that in the current language in ordinance 2020-01, the date at which we are banning or prohibiting additional bookings is currently April 15th, 2020. And I would like to propose an amendment which would alter that April 15, 2020 to May 15, 2020. In other words, extend it out for an additional 30 days. And second, what I would add is a second change, which would include a provision that would prohibit any short-term rental check-in between the dates of April 15th and May 15th. So let me explain for a moment the rationale behind those two changes. One essentially is impacted, I think, by the rapidly changing nature and of both the virus and the response that we're seeing on the federal and state level. I think over the weekend that we saw at the national level a good deal of action and comments that suggested that that we were looking at a longer-term situation, a longer-term response than we may have fully thought and considered when we established the April 15th date. Over the weekend, the National Task Force changed and extended their actions from, I believe, April 15th to April 30th. So part of what we're trying to do, or what I'm suggesting with this, is that we need to recognize that at all levels there is a perception now that the efforts that we are going to have to take to combat this virus and to combat its potential for coming into our community is a longer than 14-day exercise, and that we should extend this out at this point until the middle of May. If by any stretch we concluded 2 weeks from now that that was too far, we can always come back and go do something less. The reason behind the second provision is that when we took the action a week ago to go ahead and allow bookings that had already been made to check in, we did that on the basis that they were limited, that we did not have a lot of bookings that we were actually impacting. I have no reason, if anything, the data I have suggests that the number of existing bookings has actually continued to go down, that our original thought was correct. But having said that, if we're going to go out another 30 days, I do not think that that continuing to have bookings that are on the books continuing to come in over that next 30 days is in the best interest of the community or our efforts to check this virus. So those would be two amendments, and I will make a motion then to amend.
Can I make a point of order before you actually make the motion?
You go for it.
All right, on the first item, can I suggest that the May 15th date also be added to provision 4 of what we're looking at today,
Yeah, I was going.
2020-02?
Right, I thought I had to get the other one approved first and then go to that, but
I
if we can do
I
it as
would
part
do
of the
them
same
all,
motion.
do that
Yeah.
all
Got it.
one step.
All right, then what we would do is take item 4 and we would make the dates on that consistent. So the April 15th would move to be May 15th, yeah. Okay.
And also, I would suggest that these two different provisions be taken up by two separate amendments,
Two separate
motions to
amendments?
amendment.
All right,
Because I think that second one, you said April 15th to May 15th. Did you
Right.
mean that we're gonna let people check in from now until April 15th?
That's my
because
question.
we've already taken that position and we have already, committed to our existing rental property owners that we would let them honor those bookings, and because we know that those numbers have really gone down very, very low. At least, and again, it's open to council, when we open it to council discussion,
Yeah.
Anybody
I
can
just
go a different
clarity.
direction.
Yeah.
But the thought there was to not change that direction that we had taken, At the same time, when we approved this ordinance a week ago, we did say in that session, I think we gave all of our short-term rental owners and property managers a heads up, that if we got to a point that we were gonna be extending this, that we might be approaching the existing rentals a different way, and I think that's what I'm proposing that we do. So you would prefer those to be two different motions?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
All right.
I would too.
All right, so then, let me break them up. So I would make a motion to, change the, date in our ordinance, 2020-1, from April 15th to May 15th, 2020, and accompany that with the consistent change in ordinance 2020-2, number 4. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Do I have any discussion about, or let me open it up for
Is this
discussion
for dates?
on that amendment?
I have
Did the motion get seconded?
Yes,
I'm
yes,
sorry.
seconded.
Okay.
Yes, it got seconded.
I would strongly recommend that we go from either the Saturday, April 4th, I think it is, forward, rather than to continue to allow check-ins for the rentals.
Well,
That's the second.
that's the
motion.
second, so we haven't gotten to
We
that.
haven't gotten
that
to
one.
that.
Okay.
So right now, we're
Sorry.
dealing with changing the April 15th date to the May 15th
I'm
date.
fine with that.
Okay.
The only question I have comes back to a wording question I have on number 4, and since number 4 is affected by this same date, may I ask the question?
Yeah.
And so what, the wording as it says now is, I'm reading the last 2.5 lines. As part of this prohibition, any online booking calendars for units shall not indicate that the unit is available from March 25th through April 15th. And I understand why it's worded the way it is, but my question is, should we also add that it shall indicate that the unit is not available? In other words, a more proactive step to black out that date.
Well, I feel like this does that, and I purposefully chose my words that way. Honestly, I don't know at the end of the day that it's going to matter a whole lot, and certainly we can.
Well, part of what's happened over the last few days to really promulgate this discussion is that there were rental units, I think VRBO units, that showed as available. So if they're not available, should they not be shown as not available?
Okay.
What you would rather have is that the action people have to take
Is to
is
black
not
out the date.
Is not a passive one of
Correct.
saying it's not available, an active, which is to say specifically, this is not available during those dates.
That would be my preference.
I think, is that, sorry, am I being thick, is that not the same thing?
No.
If you look on the calendar on the VRBO website, if that is crossed and grayed out, it's unavailable.
Well, it's simply shown as existing. I mean, that it's a unit that is available.
But not if you go on the idea is that if you click on the calendar, what we require is that calendar be Xed out. And I've looked at a
Well,
couple of
that's
those.
what I'm asking to be done.
Well, I think, isn't that what this does?
I think so.
I don't think so.
Okay.
It says shall not indicate that it is available.
It should
In
do
my
that.
mind,
It's
it's
not-
the same
I
as
don't think it
saying.
does. I don't think it's clear enough to me. That's my preference. I will support this if that's the vote of
Well-
the council, but I just think a more proactive, a more firm position, is there a legal reason why you're uncomfortable with that?
It's I think generally speaking, it's preferable that it be worded this way rather than in a proactive manner. I'm hesitant to talk about it more, and as we've discussed, at the end of the day, whether it would matter one way or the other legally.
I thought this
is-
came up because it did matter. Am I misunderstanding that? I thought it mattered because someone on VRBO refused to black it out, and they said, well, we want
Well,
someone to get to the
again,
pay now
my
button,
interpretation is
and
that
then I'll
this-
tell them it's not available.
This language would essentially require them to black it out.
Oh,
But we can make it more clear
I don't read that.
by making it an affirmative duty to show it as unavailable.
While I gather by looking at your face, and I'd love to play poker with you, that you're uncomfortable with that added step. You think this is a more defensible position, is that correct?
At the end of the day, I don't know that it's going to matter for the reasons we discussed in
Okay.
So
executive session.
I think
So-
at this point, from a point of process, if you want to make a motion to amend my amended motion, you can do that. And if there's a.
Do we vote on your amendment first?
No,
'Cause
no, we
we
vote
get
on,
really
no, we
confused
actually,
here.
no, I know how it works, so
Okay.
we would actually end up,
Glad one of us does.
if you wanted to, you could propose language, and then you would need to be
It would be
seconded,
voted.
and we would vote on it. if
That's
you
how-
choose to do
yes.
that. Yeah.
Exactly.
Then I would make a motion to add to that paragraph a line that says that the unit shall be indicated as not available.
To change the paragraph, to
Well,
change that last
To
sentence.
me, I would add it, but, I mean, if you think it's changed, I think I don't think it's completely duplicative.
No, that's not, Greg's got it right.
No, I've got it right. Okay, so you are,
I would like to add, and I'm not sure the exact language, although if I need to, I can come up
So-
with it.
the process
Well-
for the other council members, so, because we've not been in quite this situation, so they understand, is if there is a second to that motion, then we will discuss the motion. We will vote on it. If it passes, then that new language would become part of what then we were voting on. If not, we would then stay with the existing language. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, that allows us to have discussion. Is there discussion on this item?
I just don't understand with respect.
Right,
It's not my
we're-
first language, but I don't understand the difference between what's in here and what Chris is proposing, which is maybe
I
not
think,
getting it.
yeah, let me I think it's a minor thing, but he's saying simply, I want the calendars to show it's not available. As
Well-
opposed to showing
Well, that's actually
That
what
not
it
showing
says. I
it
think what
is
Chris
available.
wants, I'm gonna suggest what Chris wants is that it'll say units, calendars for units shall indicate that the unit is unavailable.
Is unavailable. What you're simply taking out is the shall not, and you're saying shall indicate that the unit is not available. That would be
is
the change.
not available.
Yeah,
Right.
that is the motion. All right,
So
any
we're
other,
really
di-
just moving the word not. That's what we're doing.
we're taking,
Moving the word not.
we're moving
Yes,
the word
and
not.
Yes.
That's it.
Yeah,
And I think not unavailable, but not available. I think that's.
I got it,
that-
yep.
that's it. All right, so any other discussion?
Right.
All right, so again, we're voting on the amendment to the amendment. I will take a roll call vote on this one, just so we know. Mary Ann?
Aye.
Dan?
Aye.
Aye?
Aye.
Okay, so we've made that amendment. So now we will go to voting on the original motion, which is to.
The original motion to amend.
The original motion to amend, and so everybody out there watching is not confused. So now what we're voting on is extending the date in which new bookings are prohibited from April 15th to May 15th. And we are making the accompanying change that this prohibition we just talked about with respect to the advertising is also extended out to May 15th. We have a motion, we have a second. Any other discussion on this piece?
No.
No.
All right, I'm also gonna take a roll call vote. This time I'll start at the other end. Klaus?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
Aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so that passes. Now I will make a separate motion that for the, I have to find out where I wrote it here.
Discussion on this?
This is the second motion,
This is the second motion, so.
which hasn't even been put on the table
It
yet.
hasn't been
so
put on the
just hold
table,
on.
Oh, okay.
so I am making a motion that we will prohibit any short-term rental check-in between the dates of April 15th and May 15th. And again, the purpose here and what this does is, unlike the current, or the action that we took a week ago, where we are allowing continued check-in up until April 16th, what we're saying is now going forward after that date, we're still honoring the ones up to the 16th, but after that, we're no longer allowing any rental check-ins on the island, whether they were booked, regardless of when they were booked. And so I would ask for a second to that motion.
Second.
All right.
One
And
of
then
my
I-
questions for clarification is.
Well, no,
Now
you have to
you're
get a
open-
second
now you're
before the
open.
discussion.
I got a second,
That
so
that opens
now-
up the floor.
Second,
So now I would open it for discussion.
I would like to address that.
I
can I just have
I
a
think
question
Claude
first?
started
I just
to
want a question
start.
for clarification, and then,
Okay.
no new rental check-in after April 15 until May 15. Would that, for example, include, what about renters who are here, say from April 10th to the 15th, and then decide they want to extend? What about, that's question one. Question two, what about renters who have rented a house and decide that they also want to bring in their extended family? All within our rules about what rooms you can have and such like.
Can I just say, while you guys can address those questions however you wish, if they're just not addressed at all, based on what I've seen from other cities, all those activities would still be allowed,
Got it.
right? Unless you explicitly reach out and say, no, you can't do that. I think that's the way it would be
Yeah,
interpreted.
I think the,
Understand that.
not that we've had a lot of issues, but I think the precedence that we've taken is that the underlying guiding principle here is that what we're trying to do is to avoid bringing, as best we can, new potential opportunities for this virus to come from other locations that may be having a different level of prevalence into the island. So if somebody's already here, that exposure is already here. So I think we've had, for example, a couple cases where somebody needed to move houses, but they were already here. We allowed that procedurally to occur. But if somebody wanted to bring additional people in, currently the occupancy level for that house would be the defining.
Okay, thank you.
Defining situation. Mary Ann, you had a
Thank you, Mayor.
question?
The DEAC report that we got information on today through the town correspondent says that we're in the acceleration phase of this epidemic. And with additional testing, there'll be more cases reported, which I understand. And if you look at the number for projections, I think it's by DHEC, it shows that by May 1st, we would have close to 8,000 cases in South Carolina. I think that we should stop the rentals as soon as we can, and maybe a Saturday is the date that we say after this date. I'm not sure if it's April 4th or not, but I really don't see why we would allow people to continue to come when we're trying to get as much control over the influx of people, especially from high incidence areas. I heard on the radio today in Idaho, there was a small town where they didn't have any cases at all, but it happens to be a big vacation center, and people have come there, and now it's a high-risk area. And I think on Keel, we have a small population, and we're trying to do everything we can. This is a very, very serious position that we're in, and I think we should extend. And I can tell you that the feedback I've gotten from individuals who are here is that why are we still allowing people to come here? So that's my period. I would vote to change the date and make it effective almost immediately.
Are you proposing or making a motion to amend, the proper order would
Yes.
be, and I guess we can do one of two things. If you wish at this point, you could make a motion, again, to amend the motion that I've made, which would be to change the front end of date from April 15th to something sooner. in which case we will follow the same process of if you have a second and then discussion. So,
I would
I'll
move
leave that
that,
to you, whether you want to make that.
I would like to move that we change the date, the effective date to the first Saturday in April, which I believe, I don't have a calendar
It's
here,
the
is the
4th.
4th. And just move forward from that date to the May 15th date that you had recommended.
So you would be moving from the 15th up to the 4th.
So to be clear, Marion, you are
Well,
moving.
let's before,
what's
okay,
the
unless it's just a.
Clarification, just
Clarification,
purely
go ahead.
clarification.
Got it, just for
Um,
clarification.
This is the second amendment, i.e. you would propose that there be no new rental check-ins after April 4th. Just understand
That's
that correctly.
correct.
Thank you.
All right, we have a motion, so it'd be the same process. First, for this to be on the table for discussion, there needs to be a second.
Second.
We have a second, all right. At this point then, let me open it for discussion and, who wants to start?
Well, Marion made a point. I seconded.
Microphone.
Sorry. I didn't really want to go there. I thought the moratorium solution was a very good one. I think in view of a whole variety of things, federal responses and others, I fear that we are now, I don't think this is necessarily appropriate. I think it is time to cut this short. I know the numbers are small, but that also means that we're doing relatively little harm. I think the time has come to tighten this up and to simply follow many of the other communities and say we just do not have new check-ins. That will still leave some renters on the island, those that are there, and that is fine. I don't think we should ever go to a Myrtle Beach, clear out the hotels. But I can absolutely see Marion's point, and I would support that at this point.
Well, I would go back to my poker analogy, and I would say I'd see your April 4th, and I'd pick it April 1st. I think at some point, if I've come to the same conclusion reluctantly, and ultimately we work for the guys on the island, for the people.
Right.
And I've heard the messages, so I would shut it down as of Wednesday. That way you got 24 hours to get this thing implemented. But if that's not supported by the council, I'll certainly support the 4th.
All right, thank you. April 1st then.
I guess the reason that we have proposed that it be April 15th is our commitment to the people we work with, that we potentially could extend this beyond April 15th, therefore go to May 15th, but during that period, we would not permit new reservations. So the people that are at risk, I'm trying to understand this, are the reservations that have been made for people arriving, let's say, Saturday the 4th, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they want to stay for a week, the 11th. They would be at risk under this. People arriving on the 15th would not be at risk because they can't come anyway under the current proposal. Is that right? So it's a discussion really around 10 days.
I'd just like
It's
to-
a discussion around 10 days, and I think, and I'm only throwing out at this point, I'm not arguing the point one way or the other, is only to ask, because the other change which we just agreed to, which was the change from April 15th to May 15th, while it has an economic impact on our rental owners and it's a hypothetical one. I mean, you don't know whether they would or would not have had any bookings whatsoever, and so potentially their economic loss is nothing or minimal. In the case of this change, which is taking, which a week ago we told people that we didn't leave this issue unaddressed. We specifically addressed the question, and we said we would honor those bookings all the way up through the 15th. And it was an affirmative decision. So my only question would be, before we make that decision, that change, is that something that we're comfortable doing at this point? Or would we want to handle the rest of this and give our rental property owners 24 hours notice, for any input whatsoever on that decision? I'm not recommending, I'm just raising for purposes of
Because at this point, we
discussion.
have not discussed that item.
Because we've not discussed that item, and in fact, we made an affirmative issue. Now, having said that, I mean, there's no doubt, we all see, all of the argument that I made a minute ago, which is that everything we're seeing in terms of both the federal response, the state response, the direction is that this is we are not looking at the end of the tunnel. This is an expanding issue. It's going to go out for quite a ways. That would certainly be supportive of Mary Ann's proposal. I think my question is simply one of process. Do we feel any obligation to?
I have another comment, if I might.
Let me just finish
Oh,
this.
sure.
Do we feel any obligation to get input from the impacted people first before we do that? And of course, under our emergency process, we can reconvene ourselves,
I mean,
any day, so.
as harsh as that will sound, I would say as important as consultation and input is, in this case, I do not. I think the responsibility for this lies squarely upon us. It does not, I cannot see how it would be moved one way or another by property owners saying you have to give us more time, or we have hardship, or we have this, we have that. We know that for a fact. No question whatsoever. I think, and I acknowledge freely that I've changed my mind on this, but I think the time has bypassed our more moderate approach, and I personally do not see the need for consultation. I would be more in the April 1 camp. If we're doing it, we're doing it.
All right. Mary Ann, you started to
Okay,
comment?
one other reason, first of all, the virus knows no dates. The virus is going to be there the more people you have. People from the high activity areas, I'm from New Jersey, and let me just say, people from New Jersey, not just New Jersey, but they think about coming down here when they're in a high incidence rate, and they come down here where we don't know if there's incidents at all. But I feel that because of Easter and Passover also, it's just going to be a lot of people coming into the community. And it's a really unfortunate time to be faced with this virus, but I think for the protection of our residents, it's a need that should be met.
All right. And if anybody thinks I'm looking at my phone, I'm looking at my calendar, trying to figure out when trying to look at what the dates, what the dates.
It's the 12th, and that's 3 days before we were going to.
All right. Any other comments? All right. The motion on the table is to amend my motion to substitute April 4th instead of April 15th.
I think we're going to go with the first.
Well, the motion on the table right now is the 4th, so.
Well, I move that we change the 4th.
Well, we haven't acted on the move. Sorry, we got to go in the right process. So we got to act first on the motion that's on the table.
Okay.
So you could either, and let me wait till our attorney's back. I think the process, and I'll ask for our attorney to tell us, I think what we need to do is vote on what Mary Ann would like to do is to now change her amendment or her motion to change the 4th to the 1st. So since the 4th is on the table, do we need to vote on that, or can
You just
she
withdraw
amend
your
that?
motion.
I withdraw my motion for the 4th.
Okay, and then now you want to
I want to move that we change the date to the 1st.
All right, and do I have a second?
Second.
All right, do I have any further discussion?
Yeah, I think you're asking a lot of the community to move it forward from the 4th to the 1st. A lot of people have to make changes and arrangements. We're out there with a commitment to our partners that we would act differently. I think leaving it on the 4th gives people, reasonable people, a chance to make changes to their plans. The 1st is, for all practical purposes, tomorrow. I know it's 2 days from now, but it's already 5 o'clock this day. I think that's asking for a lot of disruptive inconvenience that will pay no dividend.
Well, are you gonna move the 4th then?
Well,
No,
I'm
no.
listening, wait, I think we're in the discussion stage. I'm just listening to the folks who are emailing me and talking to me. I've talked to everybody I know. Don't have a single person telling me to stall, not one. So I understand the logistics. Other towns have been doing it in the same type of quick hit. I'll support either in my perfect world, where I'm 6 feet tall with a full head of hair. I would go for April 1st, but I would support either option, but my preference is the 1st.
I agree. It's disruptive. It will be disruptive to some. I think it will still be a lot less disruptive than having the gate closed like within overnight, as many of the other communities did. And I think disruption as loss of rental income, as all sorts of other things are really bad. But I guess I would also say if those are all the bad things that happen to this community in this time, then we're all blessed, and so be it. So I would stay with the 1st.
I
Joe, does
haven't,
this need to go with a 67% vote, or is this sheer majority?
That's actually what I was looking up.
I think it's the super majority, but
I
I only think that
tend to
because
think,
based
well,
on
obviously
something you
that
sent
would be
earlier.
better, yes.
I haven't commented.
Keeping in mind, and I'm sorry, but I'm going to point this out, keeping in mind, after we're done with all these amendments, we are going to be taking a vote
On the total,
on the whole
Mhm.
thing, and that's
The whole thing.
definitely a super majority.
Can I say?
go ahead.
In thinking about what Dan has said, I can go with the 1st or the 4th, but by doing the 4th, they do have a little more time to wrap up everything. I'll support either. That's it.
Which motion right now, we have on the table the 1st, right?
Motion's on the 1st.
Yes.
Um,
And
My preference would be, it would be the 4th. I'm with Dan on this, that at this point, and I don't think I'd feel the same way if we hadn't taken an affirmative decision a week ago. To make this effective tomorrow, I think it is difficult. I think that as much as I know we can do it, at the same time, I do want to retain the cooperation and the support of don't forget our 1,350 rentals, our Kiowa Island property owners. These aren't some corporate entities out there. And to try to do this in one day, I think is difficult. So it to me would be better if we had the 4th, because I just think it's a more orderly approach. So I would, certainly if the 1st does not pass, I can tell you I absolutely will vote for the 4th. So at that point, I think we have we are ready for a vote.
well,
So
actually,
the motion is on the 1st right now.
right, and I do think we need some points of clarification. Are we talking about paying guests in a short-term rental?
Mm-hmm.
That's a yes. So I would I'm going to propose the language that I think captures
Okay.
what Mary Ann wants. I'm borrowing it from another ordinance, starting on April 1st.
It's actually, isn't the motion April 4th?
No,
I
no,
would
no,
put
she
that.
pulled, she pulled the April 4th and substituted the April 1st. That's why we're,
Starting on April 1st, 2020, no new check-ins by paying guests
Right,
are permitted at any short-term rental. Period. Visitors currently checked in may remain, may remain.
that's, I like
and I think it's clear from the discussion that we're not at this point debating the thrust of the broad concept. We are really down to just talking about the first versus the fourth.
And this excludes homeowners visiting their own property and family of
Which-
homeowners.
Right,
I
is what you're
assumed is
getting
what y'all intended.
Yes, it is. It is
So
in my
that's
case.
why I wanted to read out exactly what the language should be.
right. Which
Paying
is,
guests.
which as you recall was why a week ago we felt comfortable with allowing the existing rentals, because the numbers and feedback we have is that the majority of rentals right now are either empty, or they are currently occupied by
Right.
the owners or the owners' families, of which this is not restricting those people, because we said we're not gonna restrict property owners from using their own property.
Joe, just as a point of order, if there's a general feeling, and it's certainly mine among the councilmen, that they could support either of these two dates, right? Do we have to go through the process of voting down April 1st and then voting in April 4th, or can we
I think that's
short circuit
preferable.
that?
Let's do it the way we're doing
let's
it.
vote first, okay.
Okay.
Just,
All right,
May I make a last comment?
sure.
I think too, to go back to my pursuit of the fourth, many people who come here who are part-time residents and so on, and renters, do drive for 2 days. If we go effective the first, people are packed. They're on their way, and not quite on their way, but they're all for practical purposes on their way. I just see no benefit, and I see harm coming from that date versus the fourth will be effective. Most people turn over on Saturday anyway, especially renters. Okay, I'm done.
All right, so I will call the question, and again, I'll take a roll call vote. Mary Ann,
Are we doing the first now?
the motion on the table is for the
I'll-
first.
I'll vote for the first.
That's a yes.
No.
No?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so the first passes.
Mm-hmm.
Well-
And
No, it does not. I thought we needed a supermajority.
I thought
supermajority.
you decided we didn't. Okay.
I-
I know you said for the
I
at the end.
think,
All
let's
right.
stick.
I thought you
for the
said for
sake
the,
of-
for the total
I was under the
package
assumption
we
we needed
needed.
a
Okay,
supermajority.
all right,
Okay, so the vote fails.
okay, so the vote fails.
Can I then make a motion, the exact same?
And can I, I'm sorry, before we just, I just want to clarify that the state statute for emergency ordinances, which is what we're talking about, requires a 2/3 vote majority. With 5 people, that means you
Got
need
it.
4 votes.
Okay.
That's it.
So.
All right, so
can we
you
have
would
a
like to
motion?
make
I would
a,
like to make a motion, as discussed, but to change the date from April 1st to April 4th. No new rental, short-term rental check-ins for paying guests.
so essentially, the change is simply to go back from the first to the fourth.
Correct.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. All right, so with that, we now have the amendments, agreed to the original motion.
And I'm going to just, one more point of order, just
Okay.
for clarity on the First Amendment, where we reached back and extended ordinance 2020-01 to May 15th. What I'm going to do in the ordinance 2020-02, the very first section says the town's prior emergency ordinance 2020-01 remains in full force and effect, except that the dates contained therein related to short-term rentals are extended to May 15th.
Okay. All right, so we, and for anybody who is watching us, I realize this seems incredibly complicated, but the fact is, this is important. It deserves all of the discussion it's getting, and we need to make sure we do it right. So we now then have a motion that is on the table, which now contains the amendments that we've concurred with. We have a second on that motion.
Yes.
So we are down to discussion and a vote. So any discussion, further discussion on the motion as it has been amended through these last two votes?
I think my only question would be if I've lost track, but if the First Amendment is still in force, the extending the moratorium that we had passed to May 15th, that is moot, isn't it?
No,
No.
the first ordinance.
It's not. If we are
I think
prohibiting,
we've
if we are prohibiting
overlapped.
I
check-ins
think,
on
I think there's overlap, but they aren't inconsistent, so
Okay,
I
fine.
think we're best.
All right.
And that way, if there's
Nope.
ever
That's
any
all.
challenge on one, the other is still sitting out there also, so.
Accepted.
And I think,
And there were additional measures in that first ordinance that are just staying in place.
yeah.
The non-controversial ones, if you will.
So, but just before I take the vote, just to summarize, because it has been confusing to everybody, but, so what we have, the substance as it relates to this particular part of the ordinance, is that we are taking the action that we took last week, and we are making, two changes. We are changing the, date at which we will not allow rental owners to take reservations out to May 15th. And second, we are saying that beginning the 4th, no new check-ins can occur, whether that be, even if those are reservations that were taken prior to that time.
To be clear, that means the last day for check-in is the 3rd, not the 4th?
Right, the third.
Okay, that's what I want to confirm.
All right, and this one I will take a roll call vote. Klaus?
Aye.
Aye.
Dan?
Aye.
Mary Ann?
Aye.
Aye. All right, that passes. We have no other business. I do want to, though, just make just a couple comments, kind of as we end. I mean, this is obviously something that we and the people on this island have never experienced. And so obviously things are changing very, very rapidly. I do think it's important, though, that we reflect that, at least as I get input and as I look around the island, I think all of you spent a good amount of time over the last week and certainly over the last weekend trying to get a sense of what is actually going on. Do people appear that they're complying with the various requirements that are put in place? And while there are still issues, and trust me, I have the emails from people, and they're right, there are still challenges out there. I think it would be, we would be missing to not also point out, in my mind, I think, how well the overwhelming majority of our residents, our property owners, the resident families, really are, I think, working in the right direction to understand and reflect the importance of this, and to comply with, importantly, the most critical things that we put in place in front of them, which is the need for them to use their own personal responsibility, to maintain distances, to be thoughtful about their actions around other people. As I've indicated to all of you, I think some of you have been out on the beach over the weekend. I made a couple trips out. The island is busy, there's no doubt about it,
Right.
because people live here and we have lots of people. We probably, my sense is, have more part-time property owners on the island at one time than we might generally have, which makes it look busier. But on the beach this weekend, while it was, I mean, people were spaced out in distance. I didn't see people, infringing on the space or property of other people. I thought people were being very, very orderly. Having said that, we still have obviously some major issues to deal with. The grocery store continues to be an issue because it is a place that people do have to congregate, and Harris Teeter's showing great responsibility in working with us and coming up with, in their corporate world, with their own ideas on ways to try to deal with that. We do have the issue of the governor's order with respect to the self-quarantining of incoming visitors from New Jersey, New York, Connecticut, and New Orleans. That is a challenge. I think that correctly so, residents have a lot of concern about how that can and will be enforced. And it is a difficult issue because it is not clear that along with that order are significant enforcement opportunities for the town. But we have communicated to residents I think more clearly what that order requires. And I think it is in fact the difficulty that we have and are going to have with enforcing that order that I think is motivating some of the drive here to finally conclude that we just need to be more restrictive on rental properties. So I think we've still got a lot to do, but it would be, I think, wrong to not reflect on how well I think so many of our residents are trying to respond. I just have one personal note too, assuming some people are actually watching. I have gotten, and I think you all have too, an incredible amount of email. And I just want to reflect that as much as I want to, I can't respond to all of the emails that I've been getting. I tried, but I finally lost track. But I do want to make sure for anybody who might be sending emails, I want them to know that two things. One, I am reading them, every single one of them. I know for a fact that all of the other council members are doing the same. I want to also reinforce that they are really appreciated and they are really important. I think they not only give us a very good understanding of how the different things that we are trying to do are actually working, but I think as much as our primary decisions on how to deal with this are being driven by the science and by the medical advice, the input that we get from residents and property owners and our commercial entities and everybody else is critical in helping us understand how the things we're doing are actually being effective or not being effective. So I just want to make sure anybody who is emailing us with thoughts, advice, and their concerns, that I thank you. And even if you don't get a response from me or any of the other council members, we really do appreciate it, and I'm happy to see those emails keep coming, and I assume you all feel the same way. With that, I'll just go down the line. If anybody else has any comments or Claus, anything?
Nope.
Nothing else.
Yes.
I would only say, as just reflecting on what you said, we were on the beach for 2 hours on Sunday. People were distancing themselves, paying attention, being in small groups. It was busy, but I didn't see a single violation of all the guidance we've tried to provide people, which is encouraging.
It is. Marianne?
This is a very serious time, and we're faced with decisions that normally we wouldn't have to make. I was telling one of my friends today, when I decided to run for council, the mayor said to me, "Oh, don't worry, you have a few meetings every year and things go smoothly." When it comes to the health of our people here in Kiowa, there's nothing more important. So we feel obligated. Yes, I changed my mind about the dates, but I still feel very strongly that we have to do everything we can to lessen the incidents here in Kiowa.
All right, I agree. I think everybody agrees. So with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All right, we're adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.